Hi, everyone. It's Naomi Wolf, take two, with better light and sound. I'm going to share again uh, the extraordinary message of John Addington Symonds for those who are just tuning in. This is an excerpt which is really chilling and inspiring, in my view, equally. John Addington Symonds, who is the hero of my book, Outrages, Sex, Censorship, and the Criminalization of Love, which is being published in 7 weeks by Chelsea Green. It's a book that was canceled last spring. This version has been revised and expanded and showcases the work of an incredible range of LGBTQ history scholars. But Symonds is a hero who really should be better known. He wrote the first gay rights manifesto in English, A Problem in Modern Ethics. And in this excerpt from Outrages, he is explaining to his future editor the key to codes that he buried in his own work, because he knew that writing about same-sex love, love between men, sex between men, was illegal at the time that he was writing in the 19th century in Britain. And so he was actually writing, it's so extraordinary, he was writing to a freer future that he believed would someday come, and to readers that he believed someday would exist who would want to hear his message about the nobility and beauty of same-sex love, and who wouldn't see it as vile or degraded or amoral, which was the discourse of his day, let alone criminal. Outrages is the story of that first generation of activists for what today we would call gay rights. It's a term that didn't exist. Or feminism. The first feminists are also heroines of Outrages. And so in this excerpt that I'm going to read to you, because I want to share with you my excitement about this book, and of course encourage you to read it yourselves, get it yourselves, share it with your friends, he is explaining to a future editor how to decode keys that he left in a secret memoir that he could never publish in his lifetime because it was illegal. In 1857, the Obscene Publications Act made all writing about sexuality illegal, with penalties at hard labor. And until 1861 in Britain, same-sex sodomy still carried the death penalty, in spite of a lot of misinformation from last spring claiming that is not true. It is true. And also after 1861, when he was a young adult, it still carried penalties of years, sometimes sentences of 10 or 15 years at hard labor. So it was very brave and very dangerous what he was doing in keeping the secret memoir. And it's amazing to hear his instructions to the future. So here you go. I got chills as I understood what I was reading. Symonds had played alchemically with both time and chronological order to do something I had never seen any other writer do or even dream of. With a kind of mad brilliance, he had created a time capsule Rubik's Cube, making use of both the present and the future to ensure that future readers could solve the puzzle he had left for them, and thus unlock his truly intended love story. I mean, this is what he did. He would publish books that seemed really boring and anodyne, but he left a key in which, if you read certain phrases, if you read certain pages and mapped them against other pages and other books to which he also left the key, out of that would leap out this incredible love story. He was an older man in midlife when he finally found the great love of his life, a gondolier named Angelo Fusato. But then they had what today we would call a marriage. Of course, same-sex marriage didn't exist then. But he found true love at last, and he left the story of his true love encoded for the future because it was so illegal for him to write about it directly. And he tasked the unlocking of the puzzle to a reader whom he had faith would someday exist, an editor who would care so much about his work that more than a century in the future, that she would not only follow his instructions, but also explain them to the world. He didn't just have faith that there would be such a person to be his voice. He also believed that she, in turn, would have a publisher. And when present and future spoke to each other, a passionate and fully declared love story would click into place and emerge into life. Part of the puzzle that Symonds prepared can never be fully decoded. The John Morden poems were written between 1866 and 1875 during his affair with Norman Moore. This epic review of the love of men for men, quote, in all periods of civilization, end quote, was broken up, scattered to various places. As we have seen, some pieces have been lost or destroyed altogether after friends told Symonds that this story should be suppressed. Symonds asks his future editor to print John, this now lost poem, as an appendix to his memoirs. But Dr. Regis, his editor, regrets that Symonds' request to have it printed as an appendix cannot be fulfilled unless the work comes to light in the future. This is spooky enough. A living editor is regretting being able to fulfill a courtesy requested of her by a writer who is dead. The other poems, though, she points out, do exist and can be put together in the puzzle format that Symonds prescribed to the future. I mean, you get what I'm saying here. He actually embedded solutions, a third story inside books of his in code. And when you lock those books together, this third story leaps into life, tells the truths he couldn't tell without getting arrested. Dr. Regis writes, even spookier, Symonds left notes to his future editor across from the title page on one set of poems. Symonds explains that he knows he will be dead when he has this dialogue with the editor who is not yet alive. Quote, this book is in a deep sense of the term a posthumous publication. In spite of its imitative immaturity, the feelings that produced it were spontaneous and genuine, and the editor has reason to believe that they will find an echo in not a few young minds. Dr. Regis writes, reading these words in a special collection at Bristol was an uncanny experience, for here was Symonds feeding me lines. He writes to me as his editor. In 1889 or 1890, Symonds had put the copy of the poem away, annotated with editorial directions he had written to someone who didn't yet exist, to the unborn Amber Regis, for her to fulfill eventually in 2016, 2017. Symonds' incredibly daring long-shot bet on the human race paid off. Amber Regis had indeed been born and educated, a young professor who is active on social media and is clearly adored by her students. She exists as Symonds had prophetically wagered that she would. She had sought a doctorate in literature, focusing on queer studies, something that in the 1880s was impossible even to imagine. But now her field existed. Regis, now trained, had indeed, as Symonds had intended his future editor to do long ago, sat down in front of the long-sealed package, opened it, and read. And she did indeed find, as Symonds had hoped long ago, that what she read would, quote, find an echo in not a few young minds and should be brought out into the world. And now she did indeed have a publisher to assist her, Palgrave Macmillan, which was no longer risking prosecution to do so, and which readily did the work of production and distribution to deliver Symonds' long silent message into my hands and into the hands of others. The author, long dead, the young editor, vibrantly alive, were in a relationship that had been planned on in 1881. It gives me chills. A man had made a bet on a better evolution of history, so now, having bet rightly, his ghost had a team of dedicated living helpers. The director of operations may have been dead, but he was no less importunate. His directions about how to produce, distribute, and interpret his message leapt off the page. He had orchestrated this team from 140 years in the past, and now I too had joined it. And now his message has reached your own hands, dear reader. So that is the incredible story of how John Addington Symonds, or a taste of it, had left clues or codes or keys for future readers to unpack and discover in a manuscript that was secret in his lifetime, that was evidence of a crime, that he embargoed for 50 years, that only has come out in a published edition a couple of years ago, in a scholarly edition by Macmillan. This is how he made sure that the future he was betting on would find him and unearth and uncover what he wanted to say to young people, which is that same-sex love was not vile and degraded and immoral, the language of his day, but noble and beautiful in his view, in his words. This is a man who risked so much prison at hard labor in most of his lifetime to leave these words for us. And it's so extraordinary to me that his faith in books helped bring about the world that we inherit, not just he, but his fellow sexual dissidents, a term that has been coined to describe this generation. Walt Whitman, with whom he had a loving epistolary relationship across the ocean. Annie Besant, one of the first feminists who also risked prison and lost custody of her 8-year-old daughter, Mabel, for daring to publish a book explaining to women how to control their reproductive lives. People like Edward Carpenter, also one of the first advocates for equal rights and understanding for people today that we would call members of the LGBTQ community. These people were writing in a time when writing these words was a crime, but they believed in the future. And with their courage and that of a handful of booksellers, librarians, printers, and publishers, their words survived. Censorship couldn't kill them. Laws against sodomy couldn't stop them from telling the truth about love and about the equal rights of men and women and people of all sexualities. And so their words came to us, survived, through subterfuge and through challenges and through court orders and difficulties. And today their words, John Addington Symonds became the author of A Problem in Modern Ethics, which many see as the first gay rights manifesto in English. He in turn inspired Havelock Ellis and Ellis's view that we're all on a spectrum of sexuality and it's all natural and good is now the view of the modern age. Symonds was instrumental in bringing that about, even though his name is largely forgotten by most people. Many people don't know who he is. So to me, this is such a beautiful story because he was censored and silenced and threatened with jail, but he believed in love and he believed in a future that he could not even live to see, and his belief helped make it so. And this dialogue between him and a young, hip, social media savvy queer studies scholar in 2016, 2017, this dialogue from beyond the grave is one of the most beautiful things, one of the most moving things, one of the most moving testimonies to the power of books and language I've ever seen. So please send for Outrages, pre-order Outrages, read the story of this amazing man, and you will be as moved as I was, I hope and trust. Thank you so much. Naomi Wolf and Outrages is the book by Chelsea Green.